Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Ichigo awoke his true powers. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name in the description below. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 16, Admit Your Love, A Visit to the Royal Palace. Ichigo was still trying to overcome his surprise at being caught by Yoruichi in the middle of sex with Unohana, and so it took him a full minute to realize that Nell was at the doors, staring at his naked self. Specifically, she was staring at one part of him and it made Ichigo shift uncomfortably. Nell? 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 Hearing his yell, Nell blinked and shook her head, confused. Huh? Yeah, what? Would you mind looking elsewhere? When she realized what she was staring at, Nell widened her eyes and turned around, embarrassed. Ichigo looked around, trying to locate his clothes, when he felt a light tremor, caused by an explosion outside of the building. Right, I don't have time to get shy, those two are fighting, even if I don't understand the reason. He tried to get up, only to get pulled back. With a click of his tongue, he glanced to the back, at the chain that was still tying him to the bed. What is this chain made of? What is going on here? Great! Ichigo thought bitterly when a new voice entered the room. He turned his head forward, to see Lilynette staring at the same spot as Nell was just a minute ago. Lilynette! Lily! Getting irritated with the situation, Ichigo loudly called out to Lilynette, who for a second glanced at his eyes. Yes? Turn around until I get my clothes. I don't want to. Good, eh? The negative response caught Ichigo off guard and he was left staring at Lilynette, speechless, as she smiled ghostly and continued to stare at the certain spot. He managed to recover in a matter of seconds and a tick mark appeared on his forehead. Growling a little, he strained his muscles and broke the chains into pieces, fell off the bed and quickly grabbed his clothes. He changed into them after a moment and turned around to see Lilynette still staring at him, albeit a bit disappointed, as far as he could tell. Walking past her, he leaned a bit, so that he was on the same level as she was, and whispered into her ear. I'll explain later. The sound of fast movement was all that was left after he used his Shunpa to quickly catch up with Unohana and Yoruichi. Lilynette formed a small smile after hearing his words and took a deep breath. She turned to Nell. Come on, Neilil-san. We should go, too. Outside of the Las Noches. Ha! Bam asterisk. TCH, you're a bit aggressive today, Shihoin-san. Unohana stated after narrowly dodging a dropkick that sent out a small shockwave. She had to shield her eyes from the sand that was blown her way. In front of her, kneeling on the ground, was Yoruichi. Her Ryatsu was wildly raging around her, the air cackling with electricity. Shut up, Retsu. She sprang into action and Unohana barely noticed the sparks emitting from Yoruichi's boots, before the said woman's leg was nearing her stomach. She put up her guard, shielding herself with her Zanpakuto, but to no avail. Being blown away, she felt electricity flow through her arms, making them a bit numb. After a series of somersaults, she landed on the sand, some distance away from the goddess of Flash. She rubbed her right hand, in which she was holding her Zanpakuto, and looked at her opponent. I see, you're using your Shurkai, that's rare. I heard that so far you've used it only a handful of times. Yoruichi growled. I reserve my Zanpakuto for those who anger me greatly. She jumped high and turning around, she kicked the air and a bolt of lightning suddenly flew to Unohana's location. Bakuto number 81, Danku. The captain of the 4th Division hastily formed a defensive wall in front of her, which stopped the attack just in time. How have I angered you, Shihoin-san? She asked, her eyes scanning for any incoming attack. Her Shurkai abilities are incredibly difficult to deal with. Not only she's fast normally, but her Shurkai helps her achieve even greater speeds in all kinds of movements. Well, looking at it from a different point of view, Shihoin-san's Zanpakuto was always interesting. In Shurkai, the blade transforms and attaches itself on the wielder's boots, creating a lightning-based coating and allowing high-speed movements, which earned her the title Goddess of Flash.
She can even manipulate the lightning her boots create.
Quite fitting, considering that her Zanpakuto's name means the god of thunder. Unohana thought, and then she heard an even more feral growl. How have you angered me? Are you screwing with me, Retsu? This is just like with Tenjiro.
Still hovering high above, Yoruchi rapidly kicked the air, sending more lightning bolts at Unohana, who was forced to hide behind her Bakuto.
What about Tenjiro-san?
He's still a member of the Royal Guard and we haven't seen each other for more than a century, she stated, frowning a little.
Yoruchi finally landed on the ground, sending sparks everywhere, and looked up. She sent a murderous glare at the confused Unohana.
He was my first love and you wooed him with sex, you took him away from me, she yelled, and kicking the dirt. In the next instant her fist was only inches away from Unohana's face, as she maneuvered around the Kido wall. Wordlessly, Unohana released her own shuriken and blocked the incoming punch with it. She was forced to slide back, but she managed to hold her guard. Yelping a little, Yoruchi retracted her fist, which was emanating a smoke.
She glanced at Unohana's Zanpakuto and narrowed her eyes. You released a shuriken too.
I see that it does not possess just healing abilities. Unohana slowly lowered her arms so that the blade of her Zanpakuto pointed down and something oozy and green dripped on the sand, or it hissed and smoked. She offered Yoruchi a derisive snort.
Of course not.
The goddess of flash glanced at her hand.
It seems it's some sort of an acid. By the way, I never wooed Tenjiro-san with sex. I just offered him a deal. Yoruchi's head snapped up. What? Unohana chuckled a little. It's simple.
It was him that so long ago, before you were even born, had taught me the healing Kido I'm now known for. He was the one who had managed to transform the first Kenpachi of the Soul Society into the best healer, and I was indebted to him. When we had met again, it was when he had been apparently flirting with you and you naively thought that he was the one for you. I'm not sure what he had thought of you, maybe he did love you, I don't know. In the surge of an anger, Yoruchi spun around and sent another lightning bolt at the person standing in front of her.
Stopping the strike with her blade, Unohana continued to talk.
I didn't know about you and him, that is the truth, but I wouldn't care for it either. By that time, my real self had been suppressed for a long time, and the new person that had been living in my skin eventually started to feel desires, different from the previous ones.
I felt lust. I wanted to be sexually satisfied.
So when the situation had offered itself to me, I never hesitated. When I had met with Tenjiro-san, I told him that I had never really repaid him for what he had done for me and that I wanted to do it now. In return for his help, I had offered him my body. It was a win-win situation. He would have gotten free sex, I would have repaid my debts to him, and moreover, my desires would have been finally satisfied.
In retaliation, Unohana closed on Yoruchi and slashed at her.
With her enhanced movements, Yoruchi managed to jump above the blade and backwards.
For a few days, I had sex with him.
When my desires settled down, I never met him again, so what happened between you two afterwards has nothing to do with me. When she landed, Yoruchi punched the ground in front of her, creating a small shockwave that forced Unohana to jump away.
You're talking like it has nothing to do with you, fine. I don't care. I got over Tenjiro. What happened then doesn't matter now, that's what I'd like to say. But the same thing is happening again, right now. You're trying to satisfy your selfish desires by wooing somebody I love, and I won't let you take away Ichigo from me too.
Yoruchi yelled, and pumping Ryoryoku into her legs, she jumped high and rapidly spun around. The lightning bolt that appeared below her feet started to get crushed, and as she spun more and more, the more crushed lightning bolts appeared and started to mash together. After a moment, Yoruchi roared, and with a mighty kick, she hit the ball of lightning and sent it flying towards the wide-eyed Unohana.
What, a b-ball lightning?
Cursing heavily, Unohana hastily erected another banku in front of her. Yoruchi's attack collided with the Kido, and for a moment, it seemed as if they tried to cancel each other, but then a huge explosion engulfed both of the combatants. Neither of them noticed a teen with orange hair watching them fight from a distance that was small enough to allow him to hear their conversation.
With Ichigo, 5 minutes ago.
Where the hell are they? Ichigo huffed and emerged from the Las Noches, shielding his eyes as the sharp light hit his face. Damn, we must have been in that room for quite a long time. The memory of Unohana sitting on him in all her naked glory entered his mind and he furiously shook his head.
Focus, damn it.
He muttered to himself. He felt a surge of Ryatsu coming off from a distant location and so he started to use Shuinpa to close the distance. When he got near enough to see and hear the two women, he was forced to stop as a shockwave from Yoruichi punching the ground prevented him from getting closer. In that moment, he heard her talking. He widened his eyes and opened his mouth in shock. Completely stunned, he watched as the ball lightning shot from Yoruichi's boots and hit the Kido spell, where it exploded, sending smoke and sand at him.
Yoruichi and Unohana. Even if I have to, beat you down, I won't let you take him away from me.
Yoruichi stated between her coughs and tried to get away from the smoke that was surrounding her. You are few centuries too young to beat me, Shihoin-san.
Unohana replied in a muffled voice.
When the smoke cleared after a minute, it revealed the two of them, their clothes lightly singed from the explosion, but still looking battle-hungry.
Yoruichi was still angry. Unohana was getting into her old rhythm.
With a yell, they shot from their location and aimed to strike each other. Just when they were about to meet in the center of their battleground, a person landed between them and in a quick motion, he caught Unohana's blade in his right hand and Yoruichi's leg in his left, absorbing the electricity from her lightning into his body.
Enough. Yoruichi and Unohana widened their eyes and looked closer at the person in front of them. Ichigo? Kurosaki-san?
The orange-haired teen glanced at his left, at Yoruichi and then at his right, at Unohana, and with a frown he threw them to the sides. They landed 20 meters away from each other and slowly got up.
What are you two doing?
Yoruichi seemed to recover from her surprise first and opened her mouth, but Ichigo held up his hand.
Actually, don't say anything. He took a deep breath.
I heard enough to deduce what is going on here. When he said that, Yoruichi gaped like a fish at him and one could see the blush creeping on her cheeks, even though her skin was dark. This Unohana wanted to say something but she was silenced the exact same way as Yoruichi.
Don't. Yachiru. When she heard her real name, Unohana went silent.
Standing between the two women, as if he was a wall, that was preventing them from jumping at each other again, Ichigo sighed.
Look, both of you, I think we have to get things straight. First, Yoruichi-san.
He turned to the left and stared at the goddess of Flash, both of them trying to fight the awkwardness that suddenly arose between them.
Unohana-san is not taking me away, she's not stealing me. I don't love her and she doesn't love me, you know?
Ichigo said and watched as multitude of emotions flashed through Yoruichi's eyes. I did something to her and this was the only way she'd forgive me.
Using sex?
Yoruichi snapped and yelled at Ichigo, who cringed.
Why yeah, quite an unconventional way. He muttered and averted Yoruichi's stare in embarrassment.
Swallowing hard, he turned to Unohana.
Unohana-san. Yachiru. Whatever happened between the two of you, I don't want to see you fight again, understand? Moreover, I'm guessing that I have earned you forgiveness by now?
He steeled his gaze, so that he wouldn't waver, in case he would remember more of their shared activities.
Unohana looked up and stared back at him. Kurosaki-san. I won't lie to you. Even if I'm satisfied for now, I still hunger for your body. When you'll be alone and I will feel lust again, I'll find you. I know that the guilt you're feeling will prevent you from running away from me. But yes, I won't fight Shihoin-san again.
Until she'll try to fight me, of course.
Then I'll have no other choice but to defend myself, won't I?
She replied and corrected her clothes, which she hastily put on before she was forced out of the darkroom. Before any of them could react, she turned around and using the Shuinpa, she flashed away.
Ichigo shook his head.
This solved nothing. He glanced behind, at Yoruichi, who returned his gaze, but he could see the hurt in her eyes.
Yoruichi-san.
She slowly got up and turned around, walking away from her spot, away from him. When she got 50 meters away from Ichigo, she heard a yell.
Fine then.
It was Ichigo's angered voice and she was suddenly forced to turn around. Before she could say anything, she was forcefully kissed on the lips, leaving her stunned. Breaking the kiss after a moment, Ichigo gasped and with pink cheeks, he tried to look angry. "Yes, I heard you say that you love me," he said, the blush on his face getting more profound with his every word. "But frankly, I'm not sure if what I feel is love. I'm stupid in that area, I really am, so you have to forgive me, but I know that I don't want to see you hurt, sad, angry. I don't want to see you anything else than happy. If that's what love is, then I'll love you." He felt her tense in his arms as he finished his sentence, and Yoruichi slowly looked up to gaze at his eyes. She had tears in her eyes. "Yes, you idiot. That is love." Ichigo smiled a little and raised his hand. He used his thumb to wipe the tears of her face. "Then why are you crying?" She shook her head. "Because I'm happy that you love me and because I'm angry. If you love me, how can you have sex with Unohana?" That was a hard question, and Ichigo pulled Yoruichi into a hug and patted her head. "I will explain everything to you, Yoruichi. I promise I will." She squeezed him, and when she heard him say her name without honorifics, she slowly pulled away from the hug. Grabbing his head, she pulled it down and locked lips with him. As they gently kissed, Yoruichi felt her heart beating like crazy and more tears escaped her eyes. This time, they were tears of pure happiness. Following day, Soul Society. After he managed to stop the battle between the captain of the 4th Division and the former captain of the 2nd Division, Ichigo took the latter to his temporary room in Las Noches, so that he could explain everything to her, details and everything. On their way there, they met Lilynette, who had been waiting for Ichigo ever since he promised to explain things to her too. So the three of them ended in his small room with single bed, where Ichigo started his explanation with his fight with Kenpachi, what resulted from it and how it affected the two-faced captain of the 4th Division. Quite ironically, despite being younger, at least in appearance, Lilynette actually listened to his explanations calmly, whereas on the other hand, Yoruichi could barely contain herself. It didn't help Ichigo that he claimed that what he had done, he did it because it felt right. No matter how much he tried to explain, in the end, Yoruichi still gave him a small beating. However, her anger was short-lived as she had no real reason for being angry at him. When Ichigo engaged in a sexual intercourse with Unohana, he was unaware of Yoruichi's feelings for him and was emotionally confused, so he concealed his feelings in the back of his mind. Just for that explanation, Yoruichi wanted to punch him in the face. Yet in her mind, she knew that it was for her own fear of being rejected by him, that she hadn't told him her feelings sooner. That may have prevented what had happened from happening, and so she berated herself for that. Knowing that it wasn't really Ichigo's fault, she calmed down and gave him a small peck on the lips. She remained annoyed, but it was no longer because of Ichigo but her own self. While Yoruichi was expressing her dissatisfaction with what had happened, Lilynette remained quiet, but after she got a free space to talk, she turned to Ichigo and sighed. Lilynette talked only for a minute, but during that small period of time, she managed to include in her speech everything she wanted to say to him. It left the substitute Shinigami stunned for a moment. He snapped out of it and smiled only after he received a hug from the small Arrancar. He glanced at his side, at Yoruichi, to see her reaction. His fears of her being angry again were put to ease as the goddess of Flash only sighed and nodded with a small smile. How could she be angry at a little girl, who only wanted a companion? With that being said and done, Yoruichi proposed the idea of them staying in Las Noches for the night. The three of them spent it in Ichigo's room together, with Lilynette curled on Ichigo's left side and Yoruichi lying on his other side, her head resting comfortably on his chest. It took a long time for Ichigo to finally fall asleep. That day, he had lost his virginity to a sex-crazed captain, and now he was sleeping with another two women next to him. It was quite unnerving for him. Before they had finally fallen asleep, Yoruichi spent few minutes just watching the small Arrancar tossing around, before settling on curling up to Ichigo's side. She knew she should have been more nervous about her new boyfriend being surrounded by that many different women. The only thing that was easing her mind was the fact that Ichigo was still the same clueless teen, who barely recognized that what he felt towards her was love, and the fact that Lilynette wanted from him only companionship, as the concept of love was too foreign for the Arrancar. She was afraid of the future though. The thought of sharing him with somebody else bothered her. She feared that she would lose him. Namely to Unohana, who, quite calmly, stated that in case she'd get horny and she'd catch Ichigo alone, she would practically rape him. That made Yoruchi shudder uncomfortably, but when Ichigo felt her movements and unconsciously pulled her closer to him, she pushed those thoughts out of her mind and smiled. She would forget about the past, enjoy the present and not worry about the future. The next day, she and Ichigo left the sands of Hueco Mundo, and after the teen tore open a small garganta, they returned to the Soul Society. Their first stop was Shiba's household, where Kokaku was anxiously waiting for any news from Yoruchi, but when she noticed that the two of them walked inside while holding hands, she started to laugh and forced them to make a toast on this beautiful day. Yoruchi was used to her friend teasing and laughed together with her, leaving Ichigo to be the only one embarrassed.
1 hour later.
Damn, those two don't realize that I'm still underage. Ichigo heavily sighed and grimaced when the taste of sake still lingered on his tongue. He had managed to escape the Shiba's household before the two childhood friends could get him drunk and was now just walking around the Siritii. Yo, Ichigo. Ichigo gulped when he heard that voice and slowly and carefully turned around, awaiting a swift attack. He came face to face with Kenpachi, who was grinning even more than ever.
Hey, Kenpachi. You were already released from the hospital?
Ichigo greeted him, looking at the man suspiciously. TCH, like I am a pussy who needs a week to recover from such small wounds.
Kenpachi replied, making Ichigo sweat drop. He calls that small wounds?
Ichigo glanced at the bandages wrapped around Kenpachi's torso and sighed.
He almost forgot who he was talking to. So? What do you want?
Kenpachi's grin faltered a little and he uncomfortably looked at the direction of the 4th Division. I hate this wimpy stuff, so I'll say it quickly.
Thanks, Ichigo.
Sure, for what? Ichigo stared at him, dumbfounded.
He never heard Kenpachi thanking anybody. TCH, thanks to you I now know what I have been missing these past few decades.
Not to mention, I made a contact with this little piece of shit.
Kenpachi said and showed him his Zanpakuto.
Ichigo widened his eyes and had to pinch his cheeks to make sure he wasn't dreaming.
Kenpachi's Zanpakuto was no longer that worn-down sword that he always used.
It was still the same Zanpakuto with a size similar to an odachi and with a guard which extended inward from its center, similar to a shurnai. But the blade itself was now completely repaired, looking perfectly new.
Wait, did he say what I think he said? Ichigo overcame the surprise and looked back at Kenpachi. You mean, you learned the name of your Zanpakuto?
His wide grin returning, Kenpachi nodded.
Yeah, this little bastard is even bigger demon than I am. Katsuki no Gashidokuro, that is his name. A memory of the two of them fighting for the first time entered Ichigo's mind, and he remembered the skull-like appearance of Kenpachi's Ryatsu at the end of their clash. Blood-starving skeleton? Sounds fitting, if not terrifying.
He shuddered and nodded to Kenpachi.
Sounds interesting, so what does it do?
A sound of a mighty laughter filled Ichigo's ears and Kenpachi's grin widened even further.
You can figure it out in another fight, Ichigo. No thanks. The teen quickly declined the offer. Kenpachi laughed and surprisingly wasn't looking disappointed. Yeah, I guessed you'd pussied out on me, but no matter, Ichigo.
I can finally show my face in front of her again, and she even agreed to spar with me sometimes.
I owe you a serious one, Ichigo.
He said, and with another laugh he walked in the direction of his division, leaving Ichigo standing in the middle of the crossroads, shaking his head in amusement.
I already pity his next opponent.
Then he realized that Kenpachi's next opponent would be probably somebody he would spar with, and when he looked at the 4th Division main building nearby, he grinned.
Or maybe not. Outside of Siritii.
In a secluded cave, not far from the 10th district of Western Rukongai, the sounds of heavy breathing and gasping could be heard. Even if a stranger had tried to explore the inside of the cave, he wouldn't have been able to get past the entrance. The spiritual pressure that was constantly pouring from the hole was enough to completely freeze a normal plus soul, preventing it from entering the location.
Once more.
A hard voice commanded inside the cave.
Sugi no mai, Hakurin. A second voice called out.
A sound of something hard hitting the stone resonated through the area, followed by another yell. Some no mai, Tsukishiro. For a second, there was a silence, interrupted only by few sharp intakes of breath. Then, something cracked and exploded, forcing the second voice to cry out in pain.
Damn it!
Someone walked forward and approached the carrier of the second voice that was trying to get up from the ground. When a light hit the faces of the two individuals, the guy with red hair tied into a ponytail squinted and shielded his eyes.
Take a break, Rukia. We've been going at it for 3 hours straight.
You won't get better results if you're exhausted,
Renji stated and looked down at the smaller Shinigami.
He looked like he wanted to help her stand but also knew that it would be disrespectful.
Rukia sighed and sat back down.
She leaned on the wall behind her to support her back and put her Zanpakuto next to her.
So, what do you think? She asked tiredly. Renji frowned and after a minute, sat down opposite of her.
He too put his sword next to him and rubbed his hands. Both of their respective Zanpakuto were in their Shurikai release.
Well, it's been only a week since we started this training, so it's too soon to tell, but you've been certainly improving at a steady pace. Renji replied and watched as Rukia sighed. You really think I can achieve Bankai like this?
She cracked her neck joints and massaged her neck. Renji secretly stole a glance at her momentarily exposed skin and coughed a little.
Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but what I know is that you wouldn't be able to use the same method as Ich-. I mean, Urahara-san used to achieve his.
He cursed quietly when he realized the slip of his tongue and glanced at Rukia's face. A pained expression flashed through her features, but despite that, she managed to smile, even if sadly.
It's all right, Renji. You can't avoid saying his name forever. Renji nodded and bit his tongue, trying to suppress his emotions.
When he had heard what had happened between Rukia and Ichigo, he had been quite furious and wanted to go and kick the substitute's ass. It didn't matter to him that he would probably be the one who would have ended with his butt kicked. However, Rukia forcefully stopped him and instead asked him to help her train.
Fine, either way, you wouldn't be able to use their method. Your Ryatsu levels are too low for that, not to mention that those two are probably the only ones who could survive that training. That's why we have to go the usual way.
As you know, achieving Bankai basically means that you need to be able to materialize and then subjugate your Zanpakuto spirit.
The way you are now, even if you managed to materialize Sodi no Shirayuki, it would barely last for a minute or so. That's where I come into. Rukia knew all of that, but she listened to Renji anyway. It made her rest a bit more peaceful. We will spar until you'll force me to go into my Bankai. If you manage that, you'll probably have enough Ryuryoku to sustain the materialization of your Zanpakuto spirit for a while. When you can do that, you'll be trying to sustain it for longer and longer. After you arrive at the point where you'll barely feel any decrease of your Ryuryoku while materializing your Zanpakuto spirit, you'll start fighting it, her. Renji trailed off and got up. From that point, it'll be sorely on Sodi no Shirayuki's judgment whether you'll be able to finally achieve Bankai or not. He finished his talk and looked at Rukia expectantly. Groaning a little, she slowly got up and showed him her determined face. Yeah, she said and moved to the center of the cave, awaiting the start of their next spar. Renji managed to form a little smile. And maybe, just maybe, you'll even get over Ichigo. He thought, a small bit of hope hiding behind his smile. With Ichigo. Yo, Shinji-san. What's up? Ichigo called out to the current captain of the 5th Division and watched as the man turned around, his Haori fluttering in the air. Ichigo, nice to see you. What brings you here in my little piece of hell? Shinji replied, frowning when a member of his division walked to him with a stack of paper. Damn this paperwork. He sighed and took the papers from the scrawny-looking officer. He dismissed him with a nod. The officer bowed lightly and turned around to leave, but when he noticed Ichigo, he gasped and quickly bowed again, this time deeper, and ran away. Ichigo looked embarrassedly at Shinji, who was giving him a dirty look. Great, you are held in bigger regards in my division than I, their captain, is. Shinji whined and turned to walk towards his room, motioning Ichigo to follow him. Sorry about that. The captain just waved his hand. It's nothin'. So? Are you here just to visit me or? He asked again. Ichigo shrugged.
I was just visiting Hinamori-san, and when I left I realized that I have nothing more to do.
Shinji shot him another dirty look. Must be terrible to have so much free time.
The wizard stated jealously, but in his mind, he was thanking Ichigo for continuously visiting the lieutenant of his division.
I mean it's just unusual, you know.
Ever since I became a Shinigami, my life has been quite hectic and I haven't really had a time to just laze around. Ichigo admitted and looked around, before both of them entered the captain's room. Walking in front of him, Shinji's expression briefly changed into the one filled with pity, but he quickly hid it.
Ichigo wasn't one of those people who wanted to be pitied. I guess,
he said instead, and put the papers on his table. Ichigo curiously looked at the wall, when he noticed a blank space where apparently a framed picture used to be.
Must have been Aizen's. Since I'm here talking to you, how have things been for you and the rest of the wizards?
You know, it's been barely 2 weeks after the bastard's defeat, and this is probably the 5th time you've asked the same question. Ichigo glanced at Shinji with wide eyes.
Really? Sorry about that.
Shinji chuckled a little.
Don't you worry. It's actually really nice of you.
Lisa would be delighted to know that you care for us so much. The substitute widened his eyes more, this time in horror, and furiously shook his head, making Shinji laugh more.
Just kiddin'. You know, ever since the old geezer told us, captains, about what happened 1,000 years ago in details and that it might happen again, the rest of the wizards took it seriously and started to train harder than ever. His laughter died down and he looked at Ichigo earnestly. Really?
I mean, they have never seemed like they care about the fate of the Soul Society.
Ichigo replied honestly. Shinji shook his head. That's true, but you are forgetting one little detail.
Ichigo looked at him confused.
And that is?
The captain raised one of his fingers.
It's quite possible that Aizen has been cooperating with Iwak or his subordinates.
The teen stopped moving and released his breath.
I see.
Well, I knew that he has been somehow involved in this ever since I found out that he met with the ancient.
Yes.
We, wizards, failed the first time we dealt with Aizen Sasuke, and we even failed the second time. Hell would sooner freeze over than us failing the 3rd time in a row.
He'll be back and we'll be ready for him,
Shinji stated, his voice full of anger and resolve. A smile crept on Ichigo's face after hearing that, and he offered the wizard a wide grin and a thumbs up.
Yeah. I bet you will. Following day.
Ichigo awoke to a nice scent hovering just under his nose, and with his eyes already opened, he glanced down to see Yoruchi lying next to him using his arm as a pillow.
Surprisingly enough, she was not nude.
Instead, she was wearing a pajamas, which were almost fully covering her skin. She wasn't wearing it voluntarily, but after she and Ichigo had a small talk before they went to sleep, and Ichigo stated that since they were now officially a boyfriend and a girlfriend, he wanted to take things slow. He didn't mind sleeping together in one bed, but they both had to be clothed and he refused to have sex. When Yoruchi whined about both points, Ichigo just sighed and said that while he had no problems with the sex itself anymore, he was afraid that doing it practically on the same day as they had finally got together would be just forcing their relationship to a point where it should go at a slower pace. Yoruchi tried to press it, and eventually, Ichigo admitted that he was simply not ready for lovemaking, which was in his opinion different from the sex he had with Unohana. The sex he wanted to have with Yoruchi would be filled with emotions and love, while the one he had with the captain of the 4th Division was not. The goddess of Flash agreed to it for the moment, even if the first thing she wanted to do was to rip his clothes and ride him until the morning came. However, she also realized that he was still young and both of them had more than enough time to advance. She waited for him for a long time. She could restrain herself for just a bit longer. So this morning, Ichigo watched as Yoruchi peacefully rested on his arm, her chest moving up and down with every breath she took. He was so immersed in watching her that he didn't realize she had woken up shortly after him and was now grinning widely.
Is my chest so interesting, Ichigo?
Ichigo widened his eyes when he heard her voice, and she could see his ears getting red. He tried to put up a brave facade and grinned back at her.
It sure is, he said cheekily and gave her a peck on the lips.
Seeing her stunned made him chuckle, and he quickly got up and escaped the room before she could react. After he left, Yoruchi realized what had happened and touched her lips with her fingers, a smile forming on her face.
Good one, Strawberry. She muttered, and with a yawn, she slowly got up too. When she arrived to the dining room, Kukaku and Ichigo were already bickering. Kukaku noticed Yoruchi coming and turned to her. Do you get this kid? He's refusing my sake even in the morning. It's because it's morning that I'm refusing it. Do you know who drinks alcohol in the morning? An alcoholic. Ichigo loudly protested. Bullshit. That's just the weakling's talk. Yoruchi sighed and sat down. She grabbed the mug of sake and quietly poured some of it into her glass, gulping it down in one shot. Yoruchi! Ichigo exclaimed, scandalized. What? It's just one shot to help me relax. The people in the world of the living have their cup of the coffee in the morning. Me and loudly have a shot of sake. Yoruchi retorted offhandedly. Ha! Kukaku grinned at Ichigo victoriously. I'm still not having any, just give me grape juice that's over there. Said teen just shook his head and watched his cousin as she poured the juice into his glass. So, what do you two lovebirds have planned for today? Kukaku suddenly asked, making Ichigo spit out his juice in surprise. Come on, loudly, don't give him a heart attack in the morning. Yoruchi said accusingly while lightly punching Ichigo's back, trying to stop his coughing fit. Loudly just happily laughed and slapped Ichigo on his back, earning a dirty glance from him. I'm just making fun of you, Ichigo. Don't take it so seriously. I'm only happy for you too. She offered him an honest smile, eventually melting his glare. Thanks. He muttered and took another sip from his glass. When they started to eat the food, Kukaku spoke again. You still haven't answered my question. Do you have any plans for today? Ichigo bit from his slice of bread and chewed it slowly, thinking about the question. Just as he opened his mouth, a black hell butterfly flew into the room through an open window. A hell butterfly? Yoruchi looked at it suspiciously. It seems that it's meant for Ichigo. Kukaku pointed out after studying it for a moment. They both looked at Ichigo, who returned their stare with a confused one. What do I do? Yoruchi chuckled at his clueless expression and pointed at his hand. Just raise your hand and let it land on it. It will automatically play the message after verifying it's you. Oh, okay. He did as told and watched as the small insect landed on his fingers, and after a while, he heard the voice of the captain commander. Kurosaki Ichigo, this is a matter of an utmost importance. The Zero Division, otherwise known as the Royal Guard, have informed us about their arrival later on this day. Your presence is required. Be in front of the main building of the 1st Division at 1 p.m. and I hope I don't have to remind you not to do something outrageous, again. We were not told about the reason of their arrival, but it is essential for you to be there. Do not be late. End of the message. Kukaku widened her eyes a little and she and Yoruchi exchanged worried looks and glanced at Ichigo, who listened to the recording with a blank expression. What time is it? He asked nobody in particular. 11 a.m. Kukaku answered him instantly. Ichigo, you okay? Yoruchi slowly put her arms on his shoulders. He turned his head towards her and smiled a little. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Now that we are together, I won't do anything reckless. Kukaku almost chuckled when it was Yoruchi's turn to wear a blank expression after hearing that. Well, since we have some time, why don't you tell me something more about the Shiba clan, Kukaku? Ichigo looked at Kukaku, who almost instantly lightened up and started to talk about the time when she was younger. The head of the Shiba clan smirked when Yoruchi finally got over her surprise and hugged Ichigo from behind, smiling warmly at him. 1 a.m. in front of the 1st Division's main building. Ichigo arrived to the predetermined place with a few minutes reserve, still trying to get over the surprising information he got from his cousin. It would never occur to me that Kukaku was once such an important person. To be somebody who was entrusted with a means of transportation to the royal palace, that's really wow. When Kukaku had told him about her past days,
it really had rendered Ichigo speechless. Seeing Shinji with Kensei and the rest of the captains standing together nearby, he walked up to them and quietly greeted the wizards.
Hey guys.
Yo! Shinji grinned at him, albeit a bit strained.
Ichigo.
Kensei nodded in acknowledgement of his presence. Ichigo took a glance at Shinji and frowned.
What's the matter, Shinji-san?
The captain of the 5th Division sighed and corrected his Hayori.
Nothing, it's just that I don't think you of all people should meet them, considering. Ichigo waved his hand casually.
Don't worry, I won't do anything stupid, I promise.
Yeah, right.
Shinji immediately retorted and grimaced when Ichigo pouted at him. Kensei clicked his tongue and tilted his head.
I think they are coming. Ichigo looked around but couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Now that you mention it, Kukaku and others mentioned that the Zero Division live in the Royal Palace, but I never heard about the location of it.
He stated, confused. He heard a small chuckle from his left and glanced to the side to see Kayaraku walking closer to him.
Ichigo-kun, do you remember the very first time you came to the Soul Society, or to be more precise, to the Siratii? Do you remember the wall around it falling down? The captain in pink Hayori asked quietly.
Ichigo narrowed his eyes and scrutinized the wall in the distance.
Now that you mention it, yeah. It did fall down, but ever since then it stayed down, so I never really thought about it. Kayaraku nodded shortly.
Yes, since there has been a lot of trouble lately, the wall has been surrounding the Siratii the whole time, but originally it was only meant to come down during emergency situations.
So, if that wall only protects the Siratii during emergencies, what do you think it is usually protecting?
Through the shadow that was covering the captain's face, Ichigo could barely see a small grin, and he suddenly understood.
The Royal Palace?
He replied with a surprised tone. Kayaraku nodded again, and Ichigo had to shield his face from debris, when a tall pillar crashed down in front of the group of captains and Ichigo.
What the?
Tenshurin, it is the Zero Division's mean of transportation between the Siratii and the Royal Palace. All of the members of the Zero Division are in there.
Kayaraku added.
Ichigo glanced at the pillar and then back at Kayaraku.
All of them? Isn't that a bit small?
Kayaraku offered him a short chuckle and slowly tilted his head backwards, so that Ichigo could see one of his eyes. The Zero Division has no soldiers. All 5 members are captains, and their total power surpasses the power of all the Gotei 13 together. As a small doors appeared in the center on the pillar and slowly opened, Ichigo was left stunned.
They are that strong?
Shinji placed his hand on Ichigo's shoulder and leaned forward.
Well, let me say it this way.
The leader of the Zero Division is even stronger than Captain Commander. That left Ichigo floored, and all of them heard the Captain Commander snort a little.
Yamaji doesn't like this fact.
He and the leader of the Zero Division used to spar a lot when he was younger, and even though Yamaji managed to win some of them, the leader is a member of the Zero Division for a reason. He won most of their spars.
Kayaraku whispered.
But the commander always says that in 1,000 years there hasn't been born a Shinigami stronger than him. Ichigo protested and heard footsteps coming from the entrance of the pillar.
Who said that the leader was born in this millennium, Ichigo-kun?
At the same time Ichigo saw 5 pairs of feet, he was hit by a huge amount of Ryatsu.
Yeah, they always show off. Kayaraku scoffed and shook his head.
Being prepared for anything, Ichigo felt a bead of sweat on his forehead from the nervousness. But when he finally saw the Zero Division in their whole glory, he felt more sweat on his forehead. This time, it was disbelief combined with the urge to slap his head
with all of his strength.
One of the members of the Zero Division was holding a huge flag with the symbol of the Zero Division on it and was yelling. Second member had some weird artificial arms protruding from the back, and those arms were holding and playing on lots of different musical instruments, creating a chaos of sounds. Third one was posing like a rapper from the TV, yelling along with the first one. Fourth member had a huge spoon tucked in her hair. The last one, presumably the leader, was pompously walking down the road, laughing all the way.
Here we are, here we are. The Zero Division is here.
Ichigo gaped like a fish on a dry land. It's been a long time, fledglings of the Gotei 13.
Are you eating and sleeping properly?
Ichigo wasn't the only one shocked as Shinji was sweat dropping next to him.
Kind of different from what I was expecting. He was suddenly whacked on the head, almost sending him flying forward. The hell?
It's been so long, Shinji.
Why isn't Hiyori-chan with you? I'm so sad.
Hearing the female voice behind him, Shinji slowly turned around to see quite an obese woman with purple hair. She was the one with the giant spoon tucked in her hair.
So long? Who the hell are you? Wait.
Shinji stopped moving and his jaw dropped to the ground.
Hi Hiyori-chan?
The woman feigned tears and pointed at herself.
What are you saying, Shinji? Did you forget about me? It's me.
Kiryu Hikifune, the king of cereals.
King of cereals? What am I in a circus?
Ichigo had troubles regaining his composure. It was nothing in the comparison with Shinji, who was sweating beyond belief.
Kiryu-san? You've changed, Aya.
You haven't just simply changed.
Who are you? I don't know you.
He cried while the woman, Kiryu, whined.
No, Shinji. I haven't changed that much.
She took a look around.
Ah. I'm hungry.
Ichigo left the crying captain of the 5th Division and turned around when he heard another voice.
Been a long time, Unohana.
A tall man with the undone jacket and ridiculous hairstyle circled around the captain of the 4th Division, staring at her menacingly. He leaned above her.
How are you? Are you using the healing techniques I taught you properly? Unohana's eyes were closed and she calmly replied. Naturally. Really?
I've heard that you've been quite useless and some human girl had beaten you in healing.
How come?
The man chewed on the stick in his mouth and yelled provocatively. Ichigo gulped when Unohana slowly opened her eyes and stared at the man blankly.
What you have heard doesn't always have to be the truth now, does it, Tenjiro Karinji-san?
The substitute widened his eyes at the mentioning of the man's name and studied him closer.
Tenjiro Karinji was even on the second glance quite a tall guy.
Not so much as Zaraki Kenpachi, who was standing on the other side of the group, but tall nevertheless. His hair was arranged into an outlandishly large pompadour while the sides of his face were covered with tapered sideburns. It's still a ridiculous hairstyle,
Ichigo noted in his mind.
The teen tried to find out more about Tenjiro just by looking, and to his surprise, he noticed a small detail. While Tenjiro talked to Unohana in quite the condescending tone, it didn't seem to reflect in his eyes that looked simply bored. In the next instant, Tenjiro was forced to bend forward when the leader of the 0 Division jumped to him and put his arm on his shoulders.
Oh well.
It's really been a long time and I'm sure you must have a lot to talk about, but we don't have the time. He exclaimed, and Ichigo noticed that Tenjiro just clicked his tongue and stayed quiet. It seems you and the rest of the 0 Division is the same as ever, Hayasube. Captain Commander stated and glanced at the leader of the 0 Division.
Hayasube. I'll try to remember it. Ichigo thought.
Oh, look, it's Shunsue-kun.
Hayasube exclaimed again and walked to the captain of the 8th Division. Heh, look at the commander. He looks like he's going to explode any second.
Ichigo jumped in surprise at the devious tone of Ikamaru Jin, who suddenly appeared behind him. Rather than yelling at him, the teen listened to the man and looked at the captain commander, who had quite a large tick mark on his forehead.
Don't ignore me.
The commander exclaimed and raised his Ryatsu for a moment. The leader of the 0 Division sighed and turned to the commander.
Sure. You still can't take a joke, Yamamoto.
He said and shook his head.
What is your purpose here, Ichibai Hayasube? The captain of the 1st Division asked after suppressing the urge to release his Zanpakuto in irritation.
Ichibai narrowed his eyes and turned around to Ichigo.
You're Kurosaki Ichigo, right?
We are going to take you to the royal palace as the Soul King himself wants to speak with you.
The reaction was instant.
All of the captains of the Gotei 13, save for Kenpachi, tensed and glanced at Ichigo nervously.
Nonsense.
the commander said and glared at Ichibai. Said man ignored the commander and took a look around.
Well, we have to collect others, so there is no need. I have everything that was on the list, aside from Kurosaki Ichigo.
Another voice stated from behind the group, and they all turned around to see a slender woman with artificial arms, which had been used to hold musical instruments at the moment the Zero Division emerged from the Tenshurin. Behind her stood the uncomfortably looking Renji, along with Ikaku.
Great, great. We have everything on the list, so we can go back.
Ichibai exclaimed and turned into a seemingly random direction and started to joyfully walk forward.
Wait. Am I the only one who's confused? Renji asked with perplexed expression. Senjimara Shadera, TCH, always a displeasure to see you. Mayuri called out to the woman with artificial limbs. Oh, Mayuri, it's you. You still sane?
She grinned and let one of her arms scratch her chin. Meanwhile, Ichibai turned to Renji.
Don't worry, young one.
You will most likely survive your trip to the royal palace.
That doesn't make me calm, nor it explains anything. Renji instantly retorted in a panicked tone. Don't worry, young one.
You will most likely survive your trip to the royal palace.
You're repeating yourself. Ichigo watched the whole scene and felt a great headache coming his way. They're broken, the whole Zero Division is broken as hell.
He sighed deeply and slowly moved in the direction the rest of the Zero Division, along with Renji and Ikaku, walked.
After they left, Kayaraku turned to the commander. Yamoji. Is that okay? Allowing them to take not just Ichigo-kun but Abarai-kun and Madarame-kun too?
The commander gripped his cane.
Even if I had disagreed, it wouldn't have mattered. He said, and the rest of the captains could clearly hear his displeasure. Why did they even take those two? I'd understand Kurosaki, but Madarame and Abarai?
The commander glanced at the small frame of the captain of the 10th Division who asked the question. This is probably connected to the fact that both of those mongrels managed to break their Bankai, which, as you all know, never goes back to its original state after being damaged with the exception of Captain Kamamura.
Mayuri explained. I see. Or they could use them as hostages in case the Soul King would want something from Ichigo-kun.
Kayaraku spoke quietly, but his voice carried a big warning. At the Shiba's mansion.
Ah, Shiba-san, it's been a long time.
Ichibai greeted the head of the Shiba clan, who was glancing between the members of the Zero Division, looking quite uncomfortable.
Yeah. Does your arm give you any troubles?
His gleeful demeanor suddenly changed and he stared at Kukaku with a serious gaze. She frowned but shook her head.
No, come on. Let's get it over with.
Kukaku impatiently pointed at the platform behind her, where the Tenshurin appeared. Ichigo was quiet during their talk, but then he felt something light jumping at his shoulder.
It seems that the Soul King wants to meet me, Yoruchi. He whispered and felt a gentle lick on his neck. The small black cat rubbed against his head and purred quietly. I thought it would be something like that. Be careful.
Giving him another lick on the neck, Yoruchi jumped off his shoulder and ran inside the mansion. Unbeknownst to them, Kirinji followed the cat's movements with his eyes, and when she disappeared behind the entrance doors, he sighed.
Ichigo, we are waiting for you. Kukaku called to Ichigo, who was deep in thoughts. He raised his head and hastily got inside the Tenshurin with the rest of the Zero Division. It felt quite cramped and he wanted to shift a little, but he heard Kukaku's yell and realized what it meant. Fly! A small explosion followed and Ichigo felt the pillar rapidly accelerate. Why are there no seatbelts? He yelled when he was forced to bump into Senjimara, who only grinned at him. It's more fun like this. She replied simply. An hour later. Gah! I thought I'd die.
Ichigo fell out from the pillar and gulped down the fresh air.
He glanced behind at Renji and Ikaku, who were barely faring better than him. So, you guys are being quite calm. Ikaku took a deep breath and nodded to Ichigo. That's just on the outside. I'm actually quite nervous. Not many people have been here, in the royal realm.
he replied, and Ichigo's brain caught up to the fact that he was now in a place where the Soul King resided.
He got up and took a look around.
The view was incredible.
It's just like Madarain-kun said, you should feel proud. Normally, a simple Shinigami isn't allowed here.
Ichibai spoke loudly, forcing Ichigo to look at him.
I know, this is the place that Aizen was trying to get. Wait a minute. Aren't you supposed to use the king's key to enter the royal realm?
The substitute's yell was met with a simple movement of Ichibai's arm. The leader of the Zero Division raised his right arm.
It's this. Ha!
Ichigo looked at him cluelessly.
The king's key is created with the power of the Soul King.
It's his way of marking those who are chosen to become the members of the Zero Division. It is actually in our bones. Ichibai answered, and after a pause, he continued.
There are two ways one can enter the royal realm. We can allow you to enter, or you can come with us.
So, basically, what was Aizen Sasuke trying to create was life itself.
I was sure that Shiba-san told you. Ichigo narrowed his eyes.
She just told me that she used to be the one in the charge of transporting people from Soul Society to the royal realm. She never mentioned the Uken.
Ichibai rubbed his chin. Well, maybe I'm not the best person to tell you this, but
Shiba clan was actually blessed by the Soul King himself. The head of the Shiba clan was always given an Uken so that he could transport people into the royal realm if needed. However, more than 100 years ago there had been an incident, where it was decided that the Uken would be taken from the former head of the Shiba clan, Kokaka Shiba. He explained and didn't notice Ichigo's wide eyes.
An incident? The teen thought, bewildered.
The removal of the Uken isn't a trivial thing, and she ended up without her right arm, where most of the Uken was situated. She remained the head of the Shiba clan and could still transport people to the royal realm, but only when a member of the Zero Division was there.
Ichibai sighed and shook his head.
That incident apparently still bothered the leader of the Zero Division.
What happened? Ichigo asked tensely. Ichibai sighed again and formed a smile. That's something you'll have to ask Shiba-san yourself. Now, follow me. He exclaimed and turned around. Where are we going? To meet the Soul King? Ah? You're dumb or what? No, we have other things to do before that. What a dumb brat. Fuck, that hurts.
Kirinji spoke loudly from behind Ichigo and immediately received a smack on the head.
Explain properly.
Kiryu was the one who whacked Kirinji, and she turned to Ichigo. She pointed at the 5 huge discs flying above and around them and the cocoon-like building floating in the distance.
Listen. We are currently at the Ryokyu Omotesando, which is basically an entrance to the royal palace. See that building in the distance? Kiryu asked and waited until the mentioned building was in Ichigo's line of sight.
He nodded and turned to her again. That is the actual palace, where the Soul King resides. Those floating things that look like trays are in fact Zero Division's quarters. On each of those trays lies a city that the Soul King entrusted to us. She explained further.
Whole cities? Senjomaru walked up to them. As it has been already said, Aizen Sasuke was trying to create an artificial Uken, a king's key. Do you still remember the requirements for the creation of such a thing? She asked Ichigo. He remembered instantly. Of course, he wanted to use the Karakura town to, wait a second, don't tell me.
The slender woman grinned at him.
Precisely.
Those cities, our headquarters, are the cities used to create 5 Ukens, for each of us. Oh, I can see the horror that thousands of innocent people were sacrificed for this in your eyes.
Let me assure you that this is not what had happened.
Before Ichigo could voice his question, Senjomaru continued.
They probably taught you this in school, so you know about few cities that were completely wiped out in the past, right? The Atlantis, Sodom, Gomorrah.
All of them had been destroyed in a catastrophic events, and such great amount of souls would tip the balance, so they were used to create Ukens. Since that, those souls have long ago joined the reincarnation cycle again. Trying to soak all the information in, Ichigo finally had the chance to ask something.
But I thought that the souls used in the process would get inevitably destroyed? Kiryu butted in. That would be the case with Aizen's actions.
Since these ukens were created with the power of the Soul King, he was able to preserve them. She said with a smile.
From what the ancient told me, the Soul King shouldn't be that old.
I mean, the theories say Atlantis had been destroyed thousands of years ago.
Something doesn't add up.
Ichigo thought and glanced beyond the two Zero Division members to watch Renji and Ikaku following Ichibai and Kirinji.
Another question arose in his mind. You said 5 ukens, but you also said that Kukaku had one. Isn't that a miscalculation?
Senjimara shook her head, the artificial arms behind her swaying in the air.
No.
We, the Zero Division, used to consist only of 4 members. Just a bit earlier than a century ago, Kiryu-san here was admitted into the Zero Division. She was left without the uken for a while, but then, funnily enough, not long after that, the uken that was in the possession of Kukaku Shiba was taken away from her. It was then transferred to Kiryu-san.
Simple as that.
She glanced at Kiryu, who nodded with a smile.
I see.
Ichigo muttered, and since there was nothing else he wanted to ask, he and the 2 female members of the Zero Division trailed after the remaining members. Ichibai and the others were already waiting at a small platform.
Before you can meet the Soul King, you 3 will be sent to Nemea-san's place.
Ichibai announced and motioned Ichigo to stand at the platform, along with Renji and Ikaku.
Who's that? Renji nervously asked. He's the last member of the Zero Division and at the same time, the second oldest one after me. You'll understand once you'll get there. I thought that somebody was missing.
Ichigo thought and narrowed his eyes at Ichibai, who only shrugged.
He's a bit eccentric, but who isn't? Ichibai laughed heartily and walked away. Yeah, right.
Ichigo thought and watched as Kirinji raised a big hammer.
That gave him a bad premonition. Wait, how are we going to get there,
Ichigo's yell was stretched out the moment the hammer in Kirinji's hand fell on a button, which sent the trio flying in the direction of the Nemea's place at high speed.
Damn, I hate this place already. Ichigo whined and tried to remain steady. 5 minutes later. Oi, it seems like nobody's here.
Ikaku spoke and glanced back at Ichigo and Renji, who served as a cushion for his fall.
Great.
Ichigo groaned from under Renji, who took his time to get off him. Just when all of them finally stood again and were looking around, a bright light blinded them.
Ah! Too bright! Ikaku exclaimed in pain. Guests! Have a seat. A tremendous roar came out off a huge loudspeaker that appeared in front of the trio. Ah! Too loud! Renji exclaimed in a bigger pain. Your heads are too high. In other words, your heads are so high.
With a yell, a small figure landed in front of them, holding his hands high, a sudden smokescreen surrounding him.
Ah! Too lame. Ichigo's sweat dropped. I am #1 Zanpakuto creator. Nemea Oetsu. Nice to meet ya.
The dark-skinned man exclaimed while repeatedly pointing at himself. He extended his hand and with a glint in his eyes pointed it at the trio.
Zanpakuto. Love it. Ikaku lightly elbowed Ichigo in his side. You seeing what I'm seeing? Unfortunately.
These Zero Division members are disturbing.
Renji stated, standing next to them.
The trio stared at the man, both sides not moving, but when the man continued to look at them expectantly and assumed a rapper pose, they quickly applauded him.
Just so that they could move.
It seemed to please him and he motioned them to follow him.
I have a bad feeling about this. Renji muttered. Welcome.
The mixture of many female voices greeted the trio immediately after they had entered a small mansion.
I changed my mind. This is freaking amazing.
Renji muttered again when a group of females to whom the voices belonged to showed themselves and started to squeal at the sight of the 3 Shinigami with loose clothes.
What the hell is this?
Ikaku asked disinterestedly, but his lips were slowly curling upwards.
Don't let them deceive you.
I'm sure it turns out they're all guys, or something like that. Ichigo whispered, picturing Yoruichi's face in his mind to cool himself down.
No way, this is paradise. Renji muttered as his cheeks were getting pink.
He then shook his head and, like Ichigo, pictured face of somebody else in his mind so that he would stay calm.
Yo! Kurosaki-chan, Abarai-chan, and Madarame-chan. Did ya enjoy the show? Let me introduce myself one more time. I'm Otsunemeya, proud owner of this place.
The dark-skinned man with thick black hair, clothed in a sleeveless puffer jacket and green undergarment with a gold-framed sunglasses on his face, took Ichigo's hands and moved with them to complete a set of rapper-like greeting, finishing it with a clap.
Nice to meet ya. Ichigo let his hands in the final position and without moving his head whispered to Renji and Ikaku.
I don't care who, but take my place.
I can't keep up with this guy. Like hell I will.
Renji and Ikaku replied simultaneously.
However, they couldn't escape the overly enthusiastic captain and all three of them were forced to do weird positions, until they satisfied him. Otsu corrected his glasses, a glint escaping his eyes. Yuri good. Nice pose.
He hastily crouched and took a picture with his camera that seemingly appeared from nowhere. While the trio stayed in their last position, standing upside down, Otsu quickly showed the picture to the ladies from the mansion and they all shared a loud laugh at it.
Bastard!
Ichigo, Renji and Ikaku thought at the same time. In that moment, Otsu was blasted forward and he slid on the ground, his face biting the dust.
How long are you going to keep this up?
A young-sounding voice came from behind him. Meanwhile, the trio stood up again.
What are you doing, Marichan? You're ruining my fun.
Otsu rubbed his dirty cheek and childishly pouted at the girl that kicked him.
The girl, Mara, nodded to the trio and showed them a thin road. Come on. With Master, it's never going to start.
She sighed and after making sure that they heard her, she took the road.
After a small walk, they arrived at a small hut near the cliff. This is my real mansion. Otsu sighed in a depressed tone. Wow, quite the difference. The trio thought.
Master creates dubious things like that because he doesn't want to acknowledge that he lives here.
Come on in.
Mara opened the small doors to the hut, inviting the trio inside.
You're cruel, Marichan. Otsu cried and refused to follow them inside. So noisy. Ikaku muttered.
He, along with Ichigo and Renji, took a step inside. They seemed to hover in the air for a split second, before falling into a dark pit.
Ow, damn. Where the hell are we? TS, haven't you realized? Kurosaki-chan, Abarai-chan, and Madarame-chan? Ever since you came to my headquarters, aside from me, you haven't actually met any Shinigami. Those honey-chans in the first mansion were all in fact, Zanpakuto. Otsu called to them from above.
Ichigo glanced at Renji, who too looked surprised.
Ikaku was frowning. Zanpakuto? Otsu shook his head. Didn't I tell you that I am the god of the sword? The number one Zanpakuto creator? What did you think you came here for?
The trio exchanged confused looks.
Ah, that's weird, really weird. Even though y'all are Shinigami, you can't distinguish between a Shinigami and a Zanpakuto. Yeah, not okay.
Otsu continued and in a swift movement he took out something from behind him. They were Zanpakuto of each of them and they widened their eyes.
When did he? You got no love for ya Zanpakuto, that's why you lost the ability to distinguish them, am I right? Otsu smashed the Zanpakuto together, breaking Zabimaru and Hozukimaru to pieces.
Ichigo's Zanpakuto remained whole, much to his surprise.
Oh, so one of you gets it after all. Seems like I was wrong about ya, Kurosaki-chan. However, with a sharp blow to the ground, even Ichigo's Zangetsu broke. The trio watched him in horror. Zanpakuto that ain't loved breaks so easily, huh? Kurosaki-chan, you may know what's right, but fighting without an actual blade is still not good enough.
Renji grabbed Ikaku's and Ichigo's shoulder.
Guys, do you hear it?
A quiet humming sound, which was getting louder and louder, slowly surrounded them. High above them, Otsu chuckled. If you can get alive from the wrath of Zanpakuto, I'll personally reforge your Zanpakuto, and in your case, Kurosaki-chan, I'll give you a new Asachi. The source of the sound was getting closer and Ichigo tried to see through the darkness, tuning out Otsu for a second.
Renji took a defensive stance.
I'm not sure what I'm seeing, but I sure don't like it,
he stated. Yeah, what are they? Ichigo asked. Asachi. Surprisingly, it was Ikaku who answered him. That's right. They are the strongest Zanpakuto as they can become anything. The Asachi.
Otsu grinned deviously and the trio jumped a little when the first Asachi showed his face. It had a body similar to a human, with the exception that it had no skin and there was no face on the head. Instead, where its eyes were supposed to be, a pair of small mouths was visible, chewing the air around them. When the horde of the Asachi jumped at the trio, Otsu sat next to the hole and started to explain, as from the looks of it, he was sure that at least Ichigo was clueless in this department. See, every single member of the Gotei 13, former or current, is temporarily loaned a nameless Zanpakuto when he graduates from the academy.
Right now, there are 6,000 members in the Gotei 13. All of them have these Asachi.
They eat, they sleep, they train with these Asachi and in the process, they project the very essence of their soul onto them. This way, they all construct their own, unique Zanpakuto. Even the members of the Zero Division. And they were all created by one person.
Me. Otsu Nemea.
Ichigo, who was backing from the Asachi, called out to him.
If I understand this right, these are all external projections of Asachi? So why do they look like they want to kill us? Otsu wagged his finger at him. External projections, huh? Yes. It's a little different but no matter. The point is, they are angry at you. Well, mainly at Abarai-chan and Madarame-chan.
The two of you have acquired Bankai and yet you foolishly tried to use them without properly understanding them, leading to a serious damage to them. Why wouldn't they be angry at you?
You've been treating them wrong. You think your Zanpakuto is your friend? Your family? Your senior? Your junior? A tool? Your subordinate? Your pet? Your mentor? Your loved one? Your lover? Otsu rapidly fired questions at Renji and Ikaku who were trying to fend off the Asachi. Wrong. Who do you think is on top? A Shinigami or the Zanpakuto? The Zanpakuto creator yelled with a serious expression. The horde of the Asachi completely surrounded the trio and were slowly closing on them. Renji glanced at his right at Ikaku, who was getting ready to fight. Both of them, even Otsu, however, noticed that Ichigo only took one calming deep breath and made a step forward to a group of Asachi. Ooh, nice look in ya eyes, Kurosaki-chan. Maybe y'all be able to do it right now. Otsu trailed off when the Asachi around Ichigo suddenly kneeled and kept their heads down. Ichigo scanned the group and his gaze stopped at one Asachi kneeling close to him. He walked up to him and offered him a hand. The Asachi took it and all of them watched as its head morphed into a head of a young-looking man with short white hair and a pair of hollowish horns. Zangetsu, Ichigo said, and the transformed Asachi responded by raising its head and offering a smile. We are finally whole, Ichigo. He nodded to its wielder. Didn't see that one coming so soon. Great job, Kurosaki-chan. Come here, I'll forge ya a new sword. You too. Otsu motioned Ichigo to come up and after that, called out to Renji and Ikaku who were in deep thoughts. You'll stay here until you understand what is important. For your own good, I hope you'll make it before the clock marks 72 hours. Have fun. Soul Society. You think Ishin will be mad? Yoruchi asked and stretched herself on the ground. Kokako grimaced and took a gulp from her bottle of sake. Who knows? If you'd asked me that 2 weeks ago, I'd definitely say yes. Now, I'm inclined to say that he's just worried. Wouldn't you be? Grabbing her own bottle, Yoruchi grimaced. Pointless question. I'm enough worried as it is. You don't think he would really do something crazy, do you? Yoruchi glanced at the head of the Shiba clan and then shifted her eyes to look at her bottle. She shook it to determine how much was left and, before taking a gulp, she grinned. If you'd asked me that 2 weeks ago, I'd definitely say yes. Now, I'm inclined to say that it'll be okay. Kokaku just stared at her before arching backwards and erupting in a full-blown laughter.
Yeah, for a regular Shinigami, 2 weeks are nothing, but once again, Ichigo has to be a special case and mature in such a short time. Royal Realm, 4 days later. Ichigo stared at the cocoon-like building that lied in front of him and took a deep breath. He needed to calm down, to keep his mind sharp and his emotions in check. It was finally time for him to meet the Soul King. The meeting would take place in the main building of the Royal Realm, where the Soul King spent all his time. Nobody else would go inside with him. It'd be just him, a human with every possible power that existed, along with a linchpin that held together all of the afterlife. It'd also be a meeting between an ancestor and a descendant. Between a boy who lost his mother and a being that was partly responsible for it.
Well, this is it, Kurosaki-san. There is only one more thing you should know before going in.
Ichibai patted Ichigo on his back, gaining his attention.
What is it? From his side, Senjimaru spoke up. Nothing serious. It's just a warning so that you won't be confused when you emerge from the Soul King's chamber. The Soul King's presence is overwhelming, and one of the reasons why he stays in his place all the time is that his energy is potent enough to disturb the normal flow of the time. Simply put, an hour in his presence will be a day for the rest of us, who are outside. Ichigo slowly turned to her with his mouth forming a circle and a bead of sweat of his forehead. That's nothing serious? You could have mentioned this beforehand, you know. She flashed his a wide grin. Now, where would be the fun in that? Shaking his head at the impossible quirks of the Zero Division's members, Ichigo nodded to Renji and Ikaku, who were standing behind them, and took a step inside. When the entrance doors closed after Ichigo, Ichibai turned to the two remaining visitors of the Royal Realm. Now, Abarai-san and Madarame-san, I see two options lying in front of you. The duo narrowed their eyes and almost unconsciously, their hands slid down to the hilts of their new swords. Seeing that, Ichibai laughed and waved his hand. Just relax. I only wanted to say that there are two ways in which you can spend the time until Kurosaki-san emerges from his meeting. 1. You can just laze around, take a tour of the Royal Realm. Well, you get it. Ikaku glanced at the remaining members of the Zero Division walking away and tilted his head to the side. You mean there is another way? Ichibai laughed again, his wide grin remaining on his face. Why, of course. You can join me in my place for a special training. What do you say, Abarai-san, Madarame-san? Do you want to get stronger? Ikaku glanced at Renji, who was barely containing his excitement, and with a grin on his own face, he exclaimed. Hell yeah! Ichigo walked up the stairway, his eyes barely seeing the outlines of the stairs. The darkness in the building was intense. Finally arriving at the top, he entered a simple chamber. His eyes were instantly drawn to a massive transparent crystal in the center of the room. It was glowing with a bright white light. Ichigo recognized a human body inside of it, but due to the intense glow, he couldn't tell what the person looked like. Welcome, Kurosaki Ichigo. Ichigo spun around when a deep voice echoed around him. The Soul King, I presume. He stated loudly and tried to control his breathing that sped up due to the surprise. It was a really hard thing to do, as something more surprising was happening right in front of his eyes. The person that was inside of the crystal started to slowly move, and after a moment, it emerged from it and hovered just above the ground. The glow slowly diminished, allowing Ichigo to finally see the face of the Soul King. We finally meet. Ichigo gulped when a wave of energy washed over him, creating a weird sensation on his skin. Is he human? The teen tried to remain calm, but when an androgynous person, that lacked any sort of distinct characteristics, a person who eerily reminded him of Aizen after his Hogyoku-induced transformations, a person whose eyes didn't have human pupils, only blackness with a four-edged white star stared back at him, he almost took a step back. Relax, Ichigo. Remember the reason for your presence here. A familiar voice called out to him. Right. Swallowing his nervousness, Ichigo nodded. Yes, we finally meet. His eyes flashed to the Soul King's feet and back at his face. I sense that my appearance disturbs you? Should I change it?
When the face of the Soul King started to morph into somebody else, despite his surprise, a small snort escaped Ichigo's mouth. It does surprise me, but I prefer to see and talk to your real self. The Soul King closed his eyes for a moment and returned to his original appearance.
I see. You could, however, land and stand on the ground,
Ichigo stated after watching the Soul King float around. The being ceased to move and turned to Ichigo with his blank stare.
I'm afraid that is something I cannot do. Due to the unique properties of my energy, I can't come into contact with a solid matter as it will quickly disintegrate. You, Kurosaki Ichigo, are very lucky that the same thing isn't happening to you too.
Hearing that, Ichigo frowned.
What do you mean?
There was a short silence during which the Soul King simply stared at Ichigo, slowly unnerving him. Aizen Sasuke, in your fight, using the Hogyoku, he forced himself to ascend to transcendence, into a new dimension of living. Kurosaki Ichigo, the same can be said for you as you are a true transcendent being, whose energy exists on even higher plane of existence than that of Aizen Sasuke. You surely understand that your energy cannot interfere with simple beings until you allow it to.
Don't you think that the matter around you exists on the same plane of existence that other simple beings? The Soul King finally replied. No. What?
The Soul King continued to stare at the teen, never blinking.
You are lucky, Kurosaki Ichigo.
Every kind of your power has some sort of manifestation in your inner world.
Be it your inner Quincy, your inner Hollow, or your Zanpakuto.
Your soul is in a perfect balance, an equilibrium with them, and that fact alone shields everything around you from being destroyed.
Me, on the other hand, my energy is, cough.
The supreme leader of the afterlife started to cough violently and ended with a coughing fit, shocking Ichigo, who didn't know how to react. After a moment, the cough stopped and the Soul King hovered with his back straight up again.
I apologize for that.
Now, as I was saying, your energy is in balance while mine is not, it's that simple.
That is also why I have to stay in this crystal.
He pointed behind him.
Ichigo glanced at the crystal again. I see, if that is the truth, I'm more than just lucky. I can't even imagine what my life would be if I couldn't be allowed to touch anything. He sighed in relief, and then a different thought entered his mind. That crystal, is it just me, or it almost looks like? It looks like the Hogyoku Urahara Kisuke and Aizen Sasuke created?
Ichigo jerked his head to the side, to stare at the Soul King in surprise.
Yeah, how did you?
The Soul King slid through the air only to stop near the crystal.
No wonder it reminds you of it. It basically is the same thing. Ichigo blinked.
I'm sorry, what? The being in front of him didn't chuckle, neither had it offered a smile. It just stared at whatever was in his line of sight, expressionlessly. This crystal, it is a creation made from a combination of every power that resides in this universe. Energy of a human soul, power of a Shinigami, spirit of a Hollow, and the holy light of a Quincy. It keeps my energy somewhat stabilized. The thing you call Hogyoku, which can manifest one's inner desires, is created by using the same process.
He explained.
Standing opposite of him, Ichigo was on a brink of an information overflow. The Soul King didn't give him a chance to recover and continued.
Why is that?
Well, the Hogyoku in this crystal, being made from the same thing, resonates, and so the Hogyoku draws upon my power and thus, affect people the way it does.
Kurosaki Ichigo, when you first saw me, you thought that I looked similar as the form Aizen Sasuke took after his Hogyoku-induced transformations, didn't you?
That is correct. Since that man fused with it, the Hogyoku was trying to make him to my image. That is interesting, but we both know that I didn't come here to listen to this. Ichigo suddenly said, preventing the Soul King from talking any further.
The Soul King pointed his stare at him. Yes.
You wanted to ask me why I allowed your mother to die.
No. I already know the reason.
You couldn't allow your descendant to be with a descendant of Iwak. When Ichigo stopped talking to take a breath, the Soul King interrupted him.
That is incorrect.
Ichigo already had his mouth open to say what he had planned to say when he realized what the Soul King uttered.
What did you say?
The Soul King tilted his head, a first sign of emotion during this meeting.
Is it safe to say that this assumption of yours is based solely on the information you had received from your father, Ishin? What? Why yeah.
The Soul King circled the crystal few times and then stopped in front of Ichigo.
Your father is mistaken. My descendants can marry and live with whoever they want to. Then why?
Ichigo raised his voice a little, his emotions slowly surfacing. Your mother was never a target. You were, Kurosaki Ichigo.
Ichigo just stared at the Soul King, unable to comprehend what was told to him. He blinked twice and took a shallow breath. I was the target? He whispered to himself, a grimace forming on his face. Yes. I was aware of you, but I couldn't interfere with the lives of the humans.
However, when an opportunity offered itself to me, I took it. I was not aware of your mother being with you on that day, as I cannot track a Quincy.
That she died was an accident. Ichigo. Calm down.
You won't achieve anything if you'll give in to your anger, Zangetsu called out to Ichigo, who was shaking from anger. Hey, so after all this time, after all these years trying to persuade myself that I was not responsible for my mother's death, it turns out that I, in fact, am responsible? Ichigo sadly chuckled, Ryatsu starting to pour off him in great amounts. The Soul King, unaffected by it, continued to stare at the teen.
That is incorrect. You are not responsible for the death of your mother, Kurosaki Ichigo. TCH.
Ichigo gritted his teeth and jerked his head upwards.
What the hell are you talking about? Of course I am. If I wasn't fooled by the Grand Fisher, it wouldn't attack me and she would still be alive. He yelled and the wall started to bend from the inside from the intense Ryatsu that was pouring from Ichigo. That is debatable. Iwak made his selection of Quincy either way, and there is a possibility that should she survive, he would kill her himself.
What I am saying, Kurosaki Ichigo, is that the death of your mother, there are two persons responsible for that.
One is Iwak and the second one is me.
The Soul King stated firmly. His hand almost unconsciously sliding to the hilt of his Zanpakuto, Ichigo asked through his gritted teeth.
Why do you care whether I think I'm responsible for her death or not? I don't. I only want you to understand something. Ichigo narrowed his eyes. And what is that?
The fact that I feel truly apologetic about the death of your mother and about my attempt on your life. The substitute opened his mouth and then closed it soon after, but no sound came out.
This unforeseen situation took him aback. Maybe it would be better to explain why I targeted you in the first place. The answer is simple. Fear. I feared the potential power inside of you. You are a natural transcendent being, first to appear after a few millennia. I was afraid that this power may corrupt you and you would end up destroying the precious balance between the worlds. Seeing that Ichigo stopped emitting huge amounts of Ryatsu, the Soul King continued. However, after watching the road you took, I realized my mistake. Ever since my stepbrother tried to kill me, I became paranoid and forgot what it means to trust the others. Ichigo was breathing heavily. He glanced at his left hand that was lightly shaking. How am I supposed to react, damn it? Thinking about his mother, he clenched his left fist. Ichigo. I've been with you for a long time, so I'll just say this. There were a lot of people who wanted to kill you, but you never held a grudge against them. Only when they threatened your friends. The Soul King is just one of those who were after you. Will you forgive him, knowing that he is responsible for your mother's death, even if by accident, or will you try to take revenge against him? I tried to calm you down, not to leave you give in to your anger, but know this. Whatever road you'll take, I'll stand with you till the end, Ichigo. Whether you remain the protector or you stray from that path. Zangetsu called out to him and Ichigo couldn't help but to exhale sharply. He remained motionless for a long time. The Soul King was meanwhile still hovering in front of Ichigo, as if waiting for something. Ichigo bit his tongue. The hell, Zangetsu, you're making me look like the bad guy here. Swallowing hard, he glanced at the Soul King. However, before Ichigo could say something, the Soul King spoke first.
I heard that you claim to understand what is in the heart of your opponent once you cross your sword with him.
I have no sword, but I think that my arm would suffice for this. He raised his left arm and waited.
Seeing this, Ichigo gripped the hilt of his Zanpakuto and pulled it from his back.
It would be so easy to kill him.
In a swift motion, he pressed his sword against the Soul King's neck. The linchpin of the Soul Society never wavered, and for the first time, his mouth formed something that Ichigo interpreted as an attempt for a smile.
If that would ease your emotions.
The Soul King calmly closed his eyes.
Is he so sure that I wouldn't do it? Ichigo wondered, and his hands shook.
He glanced at his sword, his blade that was the mirror to his soul.
What am I doing?
He remembered the past, when he claimed that he wanted to protect a mountain-load amount of people and slowly pulled his Zanpakuto from the Soul King's neck and pressed it against his raised arm. When Ichigo finally left the chamber, the Soul King glanced at his left arm and slowly lowered it.
I'm glad I was right about him.
He turned around and neared the crystal when another coughing fit attacked him. Almost falling on his knees, he grabbed the crystal for a support. After he calmed down, he took a deep breath and another emotion showed on his face.
Oh, worry. It seems I don't have much time left.
With a certain amount of effort, he managed to stand up and slip into the crystal. Before he entered a deep slumber, a sigh escaped his mouth.
The time to do it is coming.
With his head full of thoughts, Ichigo emerged from the Soul King's building, not aware that the whole Zero Division along with Renji and Ikaku was waiting for him. He realized it only after he bumped into Ichibai.
Ha! What are you all doing here? We were waiting for you.
Recalling the conversation he had with him before he entered the cocoon-like building, Ichigo looked past the head of the Zero Division to look at his two friends. Widening his eyes a little, he turned his eyes back to Ichibai.
How much time has passed out here? A week.
Taken aback, Ichigo again glanced at the Shinigami duo in the background.
That's a long time. Oh damn, Kukaku and Yaruchi must be wondering what's taking me so long, but Renji and Ikaku.
He clicked his tongue and grinned a little.
I'm guessing you didn't just do nothing in my absence, right?
He addressed his words to Renji and Ikaku, who snorted together.
Got that right. I'm offended you would even think the opposite. Ichigo gave them one last glance. Yeah, I can feel you're stronger. Both of you.
He stated, and after they showed him their huge grins, Ichigo turned to Ichibai.
Is there anything else you wanted from me, or can we go now?
Ichibai shook his head negatively, but Senjimara stepped out with something in her hands.
I'm sure you didn't think that me taking your measurements was just for fun, did you?
She chuckled at Ichigo's uneasy expression. Sure. He replied and shuddered unconsciously. The short visit in Senjimara's place while Renji and Ikaku were getting their Zanpakuto reforged left him with a deep impression.
Not a good, nor a happy one.
I'm saying this again, all of these Zero Division's members are broken. He shuddered once more and accepted the thing Senjimara was offering him. His eyes brightened when his fingers touched the fabric of the thing.
It was amazing. What is it? He asked, uncertain. Your new Haori. I made it myself.
It is to differentiate you from the rest of the Shinigami, as you are clearly unique.
Someone like that should have a unique clothing too, don't you think? Senjimaro explained while Ichigo sweat dropped. Like I'm not standing out enough. She reached for the Haori and unfolded it to show it in its full glory. It looks awesome though. He admitted and marveled at the clothes. His new Haori was nothing like the ordinary one the rest of the captains wore. Though the base color was white as the regular Haori, this one had black flames, just like the ones his Zanpakuto produced, spread all over it, creating an amazing effect with the added whitish, almost silver lining. It was also sleeveless. On its back was in a blood-red color written Ichigo, which at first irritated the teen, as it could have been read as the word strawberry, but at the closer look his mouth formed a smile. Using a faint line, the two kanji for Ichigo's name were separated, creating a complete different meaning. The one who protects, huh? Shaking his head at the ingenuity of the design, Ichigo thanked the Senjimaro and hastily put it on. Glaring at Renji and Ikaku, who were smirking at him,
not properly seeing the line between the kanji. Ichigo rubbed his chin.
I thought you'd do a Hayori for Ikaku and Rinji too. Senjimaro shook his head. As much as I would, enjoy it.
She trailed off and let her eyes roam over Rinji and Ikaku, who suddenly shuddered. After a short pause she continued. It is not customary for a third seat or a lieutenant to wear something over their shihakusho. Saying this, I asked them about it and they stated that they are satisfied with the regular clothing.
Almost sounding disappointed, she went silent and let Ichibai to take the lead.
When they all reached the first platform, Ichibai turned to the trio.
Now that this is behind us, we will now send you off. Senjimaro-san, if you would.
Ichibai nodded to Senjimaro, who tapped the floor with her foot, and Ichigo watched as a seemingly infinite stairway that was leading down appeared. Using this path, you should reach the Siratii in a few days' time. Ichibai stated and let the three of them to jump down after they nodded to each of the member of the Zero Division as a form of a goodbye. Observing their free fall, Kirinji, who stood few steps behind the group the whole time, called out the Ichibai.
So? What do you think?
Ichibai frowned and then tried his hardest to fake an evil genius stare.
Ah yes, Tanjiro Kirinji-san, this will not go just as planned. Oi!
Kirinji spit his stick and hit Ichibai in the face with it. The leader of the Zero Division recovered instantly, but a slightly serious expression settled on his face.
But seriously,
I'm afraid that things really won't go as the Soul King planned them.
Kurosaki-san is too much of an unpredictable person.
I can easily see him do something that none of us would expect.
Thought so. Kirinji clicked his tongue.
All members glanced at the hole where the teen disappeared into and collectively sighed.
Soul Society, 4 days later.
Well, I don't know how about you guys, but I'm going home to sleep. Ichigo spoke while dusting himself from the dirt that stuck to him after the three of them landed in the middle of the Sokayaku Hill.
Right, I'm going to report to the captain.
We've been there for quite a long time after all.
Ikaku stated and turned into the direction of the 11th Division barracks.
With a short nod he took off, leaving Rinji and Ichigo alone. Sensing the stare at his back, Ichigo sighed.
Spill it, Rinji. I've been aware of your stare for a few days now.
Rinji grimaced and, slightly hesitating, he walked up to Ichigo and punched him in the gut.
Ichigo widened his eyes a little, the punch packed surprising amount of strength. What the hell? He wasn't that strong before. What training did he do while I was talking with the Soul King?
Coughing a bit, Ichigo glanced at Rinji, who was cursing loudly and trying to shake off the throbbing pain from his right fist.
This is about Rukia, isn't it?
Ichigo asked carefully, massaging his stomach. He suspected this to be the reason, considering that ever since his talk with Rukia, he barely saw either of them. Concluding that Rinji must have been helping her with the issue, Ichigo never brought it up. Rinji's eyebrows twitched, confirming Ichigo's theories, and angrily flexed his right fist.
Yeah, fuck it, Ichigo. Why did you turn her down? She really loved you, you know? He held back enough not to yell. Taking a deep breath, Ichigo looked him in the eye. What would you want me to do, Rinji? Lie to her? I care about the midget, but that is all. I don't love her that way.
Maybe I told her that harshly, but that's because I didn't know how to handle it. They stared at each other for a minute before Rinji finally averted his gaze. He scratched his head and glanced at his fist thoughtfully.
No, it's just... You care about her too, and it pisses you off seeing her hurt?
Ichigo finished for him and Rinji nodded.
Yeah, okay, I don't have time for this. Rinji shook his head and narrowed his eyes.
I know that it's not your fault for not responding to her feelings, but you do realize that you deserve that punch, right?
Ichigo lightly chuckled. Yeah, I know. So, how is she?
Rinji clicked his tongue and looked at his right, in the direction of the western Rukangai. If you want to know how she is, you should ask her yourself, but she is a bit better, that's all I'll tell you. With that, he disappeared with a shuinpa.
That's good.
Ichigo muttered for himself, and using his own shuinpa, he flashed towards the Shiba household.
5th Division.
Shinji stared at the members of his division obediently training as per his instructions and put a small letter back inside the pocket in his haori. He got up from his chair and reluctantly joined the rest of his division in the workout. Stopping himself just before he pulled out his Zanpakuto, he noticed a small unoccupied area in the corner of the ground. Sighing a bit, he dragged his feet to it. Ushering a long incantation he learned from Hachi, he created a translucent gold barrier around himself and only then he took out his Zanpakuto.
Collapse, Sakanade.
He whispered and raised his sword before his eyes.
I may as well train too.
The humiliation Aizen gave me still bugs me.
2nd Division. Faster. 20 more. Do you lazy bastards want me to take out the whip?
Captain, I heard shouting.
What's wrong? Oh, Omida, good. You can put those down and join the rest of the men. But Captain, I just got my Shihakusho from the cleaning end. Captain? Why are you taking out your whip? Crack, asterisk. That hurts. 3rd Division. Shoot to kill, Shinso.
Kira suppressed the urge to groan when a sword cut him on the shoulder. He rolled to the side, breathing heavily. Drops of blood could be heard, but he couldn't even glance at his injuries, or else he would end up with the more serious ones.
Oya, what's the matter, Kirakuen? It's been just a few minutes and you're already all bloody.
The sly voice of Ikemara Jin reached Kira's ears, but he remained silent and concentrated on the Zanpakuto in his captain's hand.
Don't frown like that, Kirakuen. Despite everything I've been teaching you, you are too weak, so in the near future, I'll force you to get stronger. Be it through sweat or blood. Jin grinned and raised his Zanpakuto again. In his office, a small crumpled letter lied on the table. Shoot to kill, Shinso. 6th Division. I see that you have returned from the royal realm, Rinji. Byakuya acknowledged his lieutenant's presence with a short nod and returned to commanding the members of his division that were exercising in the training grounds. Yes. Captain, I've read the letter. Since I did some training in the royal realm already, can I go? Byakuya took a peek at Rinji and nodded.
Before his lieutenant disappeared behind the doors, he called out to him.
Take care of Rukia for me, Rinji. Stopping abruptly, Rinji turned around to stare at Byakuya, whose head was already pointed at his men. Yes, sir. When the sound of Shuunpa entered Byakuya's ears, a small smile crept on his face. Thank you, Rinji. He thought with his eyes closed. 7th Division. So the Captain Commander wants us to prepare for the imminent war with the Quincy, sir? Yes, IBA. Kamamura nodded to his lieutenant and watched as the man bowed. I'll gather the division at once, sir. The captain of the 7th Division watched his lieutenant disappear with a grim expression. I will not fail you, Genryo Saidano. 9th Division. Until you realize that you shouldn't fear your own sword, you will spar with Mashiro. Hiya. It's time for the super lieutenant to enter the stage. Don't shout into my ear, stupid.
Kensei whacked Mashiro on the head, forcing her to pout at him.
Wah, Kensei-chan is angry.
She quickly jumped away from him and landed next to Hisagi, who was holding his Zanpakuto, looking quite uncomfortable. I realize that Captain Tosen betrayed us, but I won't abandon what he taught me just for that. This isn't Nexus Bay. The lieutenant of the 9th Division was forced on his knees when Mashiro kicked him in the gut. Kensei looked at him in disappointment. Idiot. It's not about the teaching. It's just basic survival instinct. Use the sword. It's yours for a reason. He turned around. You have to use it, or else Mashiro will kill you. It's that simple, Hisagi. 10th Division. Captain, I couldn't find Kirakuen or even Hisagi-kun, so you'll have to drink with me. Ranjiko entered her captain's office with a bottle of sake in her hand, only to find it empty. The only thing she found was an open letter on the table. Captain? In a secluded cave on the outskirts of Siratii, a layer of ice was covering the ground with a panting Toshiro in the middle of it. Ha, it's not enough. I can protect her with this.
When he heard something behind him crack, he narrowed his eyes and angrily swung down his Zanpakuto. One more time. 11th Division. Chi, why should I train?
Kenpachi muttered under his nose and threw out a small letter in a trash bin. He once again entered the meditation pose, cursing the whole time.
Oi, do you see what I see? Yeah, Captain is meditating. Kenchan is talking to his new friend. Ikaku and Yumichika barely suppressed the urge to scream when a pink-haired lieutenant suddenly appeared behind them. Kenchan also said that you will play with me. The two seated officers looked at each other with a painful expression and sighed deeply. 12th Division. Hold this. I said hold this, you stupid girl. On the outside of the laboratory, Akon, the third seat along with other seated officers tried to listen to the conversation and sounds coming from inside of it. What do you think Captain is doing?
Rin Sabukura, one of the seated officers, asked quietly.
No idea.
I'll bug his laboratory later.
For now, help me with this. Iya? Bug Captain's lab? He'll kill you, Akon-san. Akon just disinterestedly turned around. 1st Division. You really think we are that weak, Yamaji? Kairaku asked and received an elbow to his side from Yukitake after gulping down the contents of his cup.
The captain commander watched his two former students with a weary expression.
The Gotei 13 is not weak.
However, certain person made me realize that we are also not strong enough.
In the corner of the room, Unohana nodded. I agree with Kurosaki-san.
We have no idea what the Quincy will come up with against us and we need to be properly prepared.
Nonsense. Who mentioned Kurosaki Ichigo? I certainly did not.
The captain commander stomped the ground with his cane and turned around.
Genryo Saidano, it's no secret that Kurosaki-san can change people's minds.
Yukitake carefully stated, elbowing Kairaku again, when the latter tried to pour more sake into his cup.
Hoof. Kurosaki Ichigo.
I did not receive any letter from the royal realm, which means he behaved.
At least one positive thing on this day.
The commander replied in a slightly relieved tone.
So? I think that's all, right, Yamaji?
Kairaku turned for the doors and tried to leave the room, excited about the new bottle of alcohol his seated member managed to smuggle out from the world of the living. The captain commander waved his hand, dismissing them, but before the three of them reached the doors, he called out to them.
Don't forget the letters. Keep them with you all the time, so that you'd be reminded of what needs to be done.
The three captains grabbed their letters and slowly left, leaving only one copy lying on the table. The commander glanced at the letter he wrote himself.
Inside it stated,
following this day, every division of the Gotei 13 is to train hard, hone their skills in every area, be it Zanjutsu, Kido, Ho-Oh or Akuta, no exceptions. Do not take this lightly.
Another war is slowly approaching and this time, we will be fully prepared. This order will last until further notice.
Genryose Shigakuni Yamamoto, the captain of the 1st Division, the captain commander of the Gotei 13. And so, a month has passed since the Winter War and the Gotei 13 started to prepare for what will come to be known as the most devastating war in the history of the Soul Society.
Exceeding even the one that happened 1,000 years ago.
That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Awoke His True Powers.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.